What is going on in Blue Valley, Michael?
Oh, speaking of being choked for a moment or two, I was choked up for a moment or two in last night's episode of Stargirl because did not see this one coming. I've said this show tends to do like very much like the calm after the storm and the calm before the next storm in a few of its episodes. It'll like build towards a moment and then calm down and then build towards a moment and then calm down. This was the calm down point, and I didn't expect it to also like be such a stormy episode, so to speak. So it was all about the Crocks, the family that of former villains that are trying to redeem themselves. Lawrence slash Lara, who used to be the villain sportsmaster, is now besties with Pat. Paula slash Tigress now is now besties with Courtney's mom, Barbara. And they've really come leaps and bounds and overcome their demons, and they're basically residents of Blue Valley now. They were the original frenemies, and now they're friends. There's no more enemies about it. And so the episode opened with them and they're contacting their daughter, showing how happy they are in life. They went out for a run together. They just went through Blue Valley like any normal resident would. And then they stopped outside Grandpa and Grandma McCant's house and were like, we always protected our people. Well, Pat and Barbara and the Whitmores are our people now. And those guys over there are our enemies. What are we going to do about it? And Paula was like, well, we've sworn off violence. We can't do anything about that, but we do have to protect the Whitmores and the Dugans at all costs. So that was very much the intro to the episode. Meanwhile, Mike and Jakeem, who had a run-in with the massive gorilla in the end of last week's episode, were still trapped in the woods trying to escape.
About the gorilla.
Yeah. I always love it, and I'll say this about Nancy as well. I always love it when we pick right up where the cliffhanger left off, and this very much did that. They were still lost in the woods. They tried to use the Thunderbolt pen to wish them back home, but the Thunderbolt pen needs you to be very specific. So when it said it wished them to be back home, they literally just ended up back in the forest because it's still in Blue Valley, which is still their home. So they lost that wish and they couldn't get home. So they had to just find their own way home, and they were on the run. But Pat was worried that the reason they went missing was because of Grandpa and Grandma Icicle, because Mike killed Jordan, the original Icicle. So he was, since all hell broke loose with the grandparents last week, he was worried that they had kidnapped them. So he and Starman decided to visit the McCants, and Grandpa Icicle is now out of the hospital after his heart attack last week, but he was weak and he was recovering, and thankfully his psychotic wife was not there. So he basically revealed how they were chased out of their home country when they were younger, and it's happened with generations because of their ice powers. The country hunted them and tried to get rid of them, which is why they migrated to the US. And but he said,
Wait, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Is it a real country or a fictional country?
I think they said they were Norwegian, so I assume it's in Norway. Okay. And that's why they consistently speak in different language as well. And,
I've always got to check with these shows. Like, where are we?
Is it Gotham City or is it a real place?
Yeah.
But he said basically he is definitely the calmer of the two, the more polite and the more relaxed of the two. And it does sound like he, in another life, he would have been willing to let it go. He hates the hatred that this feud has caused. However, he said, you took our son from us and we cannot forget that. So please leave this house, and preferably leave the country before my wife comes back, because she will come for you. So Pat and Starman left unhappily and worried basically about Mike and everyone. But Grandma Icicle didn't take too kindly to that visit. I don't know how she found out, but then she showed up at the Whitmore house and tried to kill Barbara. That was like, our son thought the world of you. He was going to save us all, and then you all killed him. It's such a shame you won't be around to see his world. And she literally went to fire an icicle at Barbara, and then an arrow was shot to the door beside her, and it was Paula slash Tigress said, leave my friend alone. And she said, I won't miss on purpose next time, because Tigress never misses. So the grandma just walked with her tail between her legs and stormed out of the house, upset that her son's former allies had turned against her. And so Barbara, it was a big moment for Paula, because again, Paula has become such a good friend of Barbara's, and she's no longer a villain. And she said, we're going to need to teach you how to protect yourself. So she started showing Paula how to use the crossbow to fight, or started showing Barbara how to use the crossbow to fire arrows. And meanwhile, as all of this was happening, the grandma had told Cameron that he needed to avenge his father's death and you need to kill them. And Cameron wasn't very happy about that, but he decided to go off and get answers. And he had this really powerful moment with Courtney. And she said, I didn't want to tell you because I didn't want to ruin the image of your father because you thought the world of him. And it was a really nice moment because it de-escalated the conflict. He understood that and he appreciated that. And it sounded like he was willing to let it go, except the fact that somebody killed his father. He was like, but did you have to kill him though? And he was like, tell me who killed my father. So Courtney lied and told them it was her because she knew that he wouldn't do anything to her. So he stormed off. It was like, I never, ever want to see you again. But he still cared about her, so he wouldn't do anything about it, which is important because I think if he found out it was Mike, he wouldn't have been so lenient. So he stormed off. And now back to the most interesting part of the episode. Mike and Jakeem were in the woods, still trying to run away from the gorilla, and they heard the gorilla roar in the background. And as they were running through the forest, they got trapped by like an animal trap. They were pulled up into the tree by a net, and they were like, who set this? Was it the gorilla? And then you heard in the background, what are you two idiots doing here? And they turned around and it was Cindy. And they tried to tell her all about the gorilla and we need to protect you. And she was like, you need to protect me. She was like, this is what the trap was for. And yeah, you guys have wandered into it. She was like, go back to Blue Valley, go tell them what's going on. I have got this.
So she was gonna catch the gorilla.
She wanted to catch the gorilla so that she could clear her own name, but more importantly, rub it in everyone's faces and be like, "No, I was innocent the whole time." She still hasn't gotten over that, which is typically Cindy thing to do. She wants to do the right thing, but she also wants to like reap the rewards of it as well. So they went back home, and Cindy stayed in the woods to catch it. It was the only scene she was in the episode, but like it was a good scene. I remember thinking that it's been like 3 or 4 episodes since we saw her, and that was a good scene to bring her back because even though she left, she's still very much doing the right thing. And as all this was happening, the Crocks went to visit the McKent grandparents, and they basically said that we knew your son very well. We worked with your son. He was our ally in the ISA, and his way of life didn't work. You said Jordan wanted a better life for your family, so you would no longer have to run. And that was what his misguided idea of a better America looked like. That's why he became a villain. But it's no longer causing anyone to be happy. It's creating direct conflict. It's creating hate. And Jordan wanted a better world for his son. The world that we're living in right now with all these rivalries and feuds is not a better world. And shockingly enough, that kind of got through to the grandmother. She was not for listening to them. And then when they said that, it kind of did. So Lawrence took out his sportsmaster mask, which he used to wear as part of the ISA, and left it on the table and was like, if we can leave this life behind, so can you. And so then they left in peace, and both the Crocks held hands and smiled at each other. It was like, I think we've got through to them. So basically they're proud of themselves that they managed to de-escalate the conflict without having to fight. And I think that was such an incredible moment for the two of them, because they were two villains that absolutely thrived on feuding, thrived on fighting, and they're probably the best fighters on the show. They've been involved in some great fight scenes in the past, but they managed to de-escalate the conflict with words and telling people how they felt and using themselves as an example. And that was a big moment for them. And it cut back to the McKents after that, and Grandma was crying, looking at a poster of Jordan, and just said, I miss him so much. And then Grandpa gave her a big hug. And it was just it was nice to see those two people not as like one-dimensional villains spouting lines about how they're going to kill people. And you kind of understood their motivations then. But very much the conflict has been de-escalated, and the former villains, the Crocks, were responsible for that. So I think they really came through in the end. And Mike and Jakeem then went back to Courtney's and told her all about the gorilla, and Pat revealed that he had heard of him before, and yes, it was the Ultra Humanite who we all predicted it was last week. He said they were one of the most dangerous ISA villains they've ever faced, because it was apparently a really, really smart scientist who decided to place his brain inside of a gorilla. So it is a person, but he's inside this body that was created for him that's basically indestructible, because he wanted to stop the JSA years ago. And he's one of the JSA's greatest failures, because they did manage to imprison him, but he escaped. And with the help of Dragon King, they built this gorilla body for him, which then they put his incredibly smart brain into. So he's incredibly dangerous. But all of this kind of like imbued a fire within Courtney, and she stood up in the living room. It was like, this is the next Eclipso. This is what it's all been building towards. Last year, the ISA and the JSA came together to stop Eclipso, and now we're all going to have to do it again. Everyone in this room, the bad guys, the good guys, we all love Blue Valley, and it's in danger now because of the Ultra Humanite, and we all have to team up to stop it, including the McCants. And they were like, no, we don't need those psycho grandparents on our side. But Courtney was like, no, we do. Good and bad has to come together to stop a far greater evil, which, let's be honest, that's what the theme of this season has been all about.
I was just going to say that's the subtitle.
Exactly. Frenemies. So it really, I have to say that this is the episode where it felt like most progress was done. Yet again, no costumes, no fighting, just some great human drama. And I feel like that's one of probably what Stargirl does best. And it really set the stage for the final 4 episodes. And 4 or 3, I don't know, I can't count, I'll tell you later. But it really, it was a turning point for the show, and I was very happy with that until the final scene, because the Crocks were walking hand in hand through town, just like reflecting on how great they did, how they helped de-escalate conflict, how they really redeem themselves, and how they actually have friends for once. They don't just have villains, they have actual friends in Pat and Barbara. And I was like, this is getting very much like a hero send-off. I don't like it. And then they saw the posters for Lawrence/Larry's gym were all torn down off the wall, and all of them were like scattered towards a manhole. And they were like, somebody wants our attention. And this was just after they got a call from their daughter, Artemis, who was also a former villain, who said, I think she said she got into university or college. So it was a great moment for the parents. It was a great moment for the family. And then they said, we'll be home in a few minutes, love. And I was like, you're not getting home in a few minutes. And so they went into the sewer, and they followed the trail of torn down gym posters, and they found the lair with all the TV screens of whoever has been watching them over the last 9 weeks. Of course, the screens were destroyed because the JSA had taken down all the cameras a few episodes ago. And just as they were looking, this hooded figure came out from behind them and stabbed Paula right in the stomach. And then Larry went to run towards him, and he stabbed him as well. And the thing I noticed is Paula, as she was stood with the object stabbed in her, I noticed that parts of her skin started to turn slightly blue and then start to crack like ice. And then he pulled the blades out of both of them, and they both fell together. And he ripped the mask off to reveal that it was Jordan, aka Icicle, aka the villain of season 1, who was shattered into thousands of pieces, is still alive. And he was like, at least the 2 of you will die together. And a really, really heartbreaking moment, Larry and Paula reached for each other on the floor and both said, I love you, at the same time, as they both turned into ice sculptures. And you could see the tear running down Paula's face. And then Jordan went like that there. And literally they both shattered into thousands of pieces and then turned to dust.
There's so many moving parts to the show.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that was it. Icicle is back. That is why they finally decided to pull the trigger on the Cameron storyline now, after building towards it for seasons.
I'm kind of heartbroken still about Cameron and Courtney, because as a viewer, it's so bittersweet when you watch a character make a sacrifice like that for somebody that they care about, and you know they're taking that bullet so that this person can have some sort of inner peace. But it's so hard to watch as a viewer, because you're like, we know the truth, but he can't know it. It's like, I don't know, it broke my heart to hear that.
I feel like that will play into the next 3 episodes, because now
I
that
hope so.
Jordan's back, I think Cameron will get to see what his father was, who his father became, and that he was never the good person he ever thought that he was. And it's also interesting to me is that the villains of this piece so far it seemed to be the grandparents, but it was grief that was driving them. Yes, they turned into one-dimensional villains as a result, but it was very much grief that was driving them. So now that they've kind of addressed that and the grandparents are ready to move on, how will they react that their son is still alive and that he's still as evil as he ever was? I know for a fact that in the promo next week, Jordan takes off his gloves and you can see some of his fingers aren't fully formed and they're starting to turn back into ice. So I think whatever happened is that when he shattered, he wasn't put back together right. And maybe that's why he's wearing this hooded cloak or whatever to keep him together, because this very much is not an icicle outfit. But yeah, I just don't want to. I don't want to bury the lead here. But like it seems like Icicle was the one responsible for it all along. He was the one watching them on the cameras, and I said that the Ultra Humanite seems to be the one that was doing his bidding. But it very much feels like Icicle's been the one pulling the strings the whole time. He must have killed the gambler. He must have attacked Starman. So it's. Wow. I love the fact that the subplot has played into the main story now, because I said that the Cameron story was very much a series story and the murder mystery was very much a season story. And it turns out they were both more connected than any of us knew. I'm gutted about the Crocks because they came on so far. I don't want to lose them. I love the relation. I loved Paula's relationship with Barbara, but I also liked Larry's relationship with Pat. It's hard to go. It's going to be, even though there's only like 3 episodes left, it's going to be hard to imagine the show without them.
Yeah, no, I'm upset and I don't even go here. Like, I am like, Jordan, why was this? I mean, great, like writing wise, great return. Emotionally, it's just like the Crocks deserve better. Right. Like they got everything.
I'm sure they'll be back.
They're shattered, Reed.
Oh, the other guy was shattered and came back.
No, but he has ice powers.
He can melt. He can melt and bring himself back.
We'll see.
Apparently. But yeah, set the stage now for the final 3 episodes. What side will the grandparents choose? What side will Cameron choose? What side will Cindy choose? Because it very much seems, without a doubt, yes. It'll just happen to line up with everybody else's. But he's very much seems to be that he's out to get revenge on his former enemy or his former allies, because so far he's killed the gambler who he once worked with. He's attacked Starman, who was once his mortal enemy, but Starman was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And now he's killed the Crocks, who were his former allies. So why it seems to be that he doesn't like the fact that the bad guys have gone good, and maybe he's trying to get revenge on them. And I think maybe the ultimate deciding factor in that test will be Cameron, because he's now been faced with a path of good versus bad. And I do feel like in the end, Cameron's a good person who's just been brought up into a very bad world. So I feel like all in all, he will choose good in the end. But yeah, the emotional stakes, the conflict, the choices, it's going to make for a very interesting final 3 episodes, and I can't wait. But I am still very upset about the Crocks, and I don't think I'll get over that.
That's understandable. I know you have a lot to headed towards you as you head towards the end of the season. End of the series. To the end of the series, but it sounds like it's going to be spectacular. That they're not resting on their laurels, which is good.
Yeah, I think we're in for like a worthy series finale, and I hate that I even have to say that, but I'm excited to see how it ends. And I have no doubt that the team behind Stargirl will make sure that it's been as high quality as the rest of the series. And I can't wait, even if I know for a fact I will be emotionally traumatized for the next 3 weeks.